right, everybody for confirmation, come on and sit up in the front here. Matt, come on. Christopher, Nicholas. We're going to have a church chat. You can listen in. All right, now, listen. Pentecost was a prophecy that had been made about 800 years before it was read in the first lesson. The day of Pentecost actually happened. It was made by a prophet by the name of Joel, who was saying always that God is constantly involved in doing new things. Sometimes we don't see it, sometimes we totally miss the boat. For example, what is the largest leviathan in the ocean? Fish, whatever. Is it a blue whale or an orca? I'm asking you guys. Huh? A blue whale would be the largest, okay? Orca is better known, but the blue whale is largest. I don't know if you noticed in the psalm why God made it. For the sport of it. He didn't make it necessarily with a humongous purpose, but the sport of it. So you could enjoy it, just by watching it and seeing it. And that is one of the reasons that God has sent His Holy Spirit into Christians, as He has promised to do for all time, so that we can see the activity of God in all kinds of different ways. Some things are there just for fun. If you have a pet at home, you don't need the pet, but it's fun to have a pet around. And sometimes if you're feeling really lousy and you think the whole world just really hates you or doesn't like you or you're having a horrible day, sometimes having a pet isn't bad because you know your pet will always love you and be nice to you. Trust is the name of the Pentecost game. And it is trusting the Lord that the Spirit will cause to happen in you. And trust takes a multitude of faces and circumstances with people. How do you learn to trust people? It's by being in a relationship with them, right? It could be your folks, it could be your friends, it can be your church mates. When you eventually get a part-time job, you're going to have to learn how to trust the people you're working with. There's any number of ways in which trust grows or disappears. But it's always in relationships. And that is what happens on the day of Pentecost. We are all given the gift of the Holy Spirit, which is going to call forth from you a love of Jesus, simply because of what He has provided for you, amazingly enough that you didn't even ask for. For example, Christopher, you didn't ask to be born, right? No, you didn't. Matthew, you change your own diapers when you were a baby? I just embarrassed you good, didn't I? Yes, I did. Okay, sorry. And who fed you when you were hungry? Yes, we all know. It wasn't you yourself. You came as a gift. And that gift then is cherished, not just by your parents, but also by extended family, also by extended people otherwise that you know here in the church family, and also even in school, not everybody, but in school usually, there's a few anyhow. And also as you're growing in life, you're going to find that there are people that you learn to trust because they have been good with you, and they have learned to trust you. And that's what Pentecost has done for you and for all of us. We've been given the gift of the Spirit, and we know it best at the points where we have to wrestle with the idea of trust, trusting others. And do we trust Jesus? Has He, in fact, said, I love you, Jake, enough times that it gets through that thick head? Oh, you all have thick heads. You all have thick heads. So do I. It's so easy to gather material in life saying, oh man, everybody stinks, you got to watch your back all the time, who's got your back, you know, all that kind of good stuff. Well, the fact of the matter is, most of us have a lot of people that we can trust, but here's the other piece. It has to be cultivated. It's like digging out for a garden and planting flowers. The soil has to be cultivated. It has to be worked, watered, fertilized, cared for. And that's true of every relationship you will ever have up to this point and in your future. And it's the same with the people who are going to learn to trust you. It has to be cultivated and worked on. And that is what the promise of God is to you through the gift of the Holy Spirit. That He will work internally in you so that you can recognize the people and circumstances that you find yourself where certain gifts are called for. That's the other promise of Pentecost, that you will be well equipped in life to handle whatever comes down the road. Part of the equipment that you're given, and you often don't think about it, most of us don't here in the States, we don't think of the church family as part of our extended family. And that's really too bad, because when you look around at each other later today, and when we're receiving communion, you see all kinds of skill sets, all kinds of interests, all kinds of different abilities. And when you put it all together into a working unit, you got quite an operation going on. And that is the other gift of Pentecost, the recognition that everybody that you hang out with in the church has a skill set. And the question is, what do we do with that? Do we help to draw that out, or do we suppress it? You are now being called out because you have reached an age that the church has said you can now go public with your faith. The other part of the gift of Pentecost and the Holy Spirit is the ability to communicate with some clarity that which you know. Notice I said that which you know. You don't want to tell people about your faith and say stuff that you don't know or you're not sure about. The only thing that you know for sure at this point, and that I always know for sure, is that God made the blue whale and orca for fun. Now, you know an awful lot of people in this world, and so do all of you. You know a lot of people, and I hope none of it is you, that don't have any fun in life. Why live if you can't recognize the fun and joy which is present in all different parts of the created order, in all different parts of life? So that's one thing that I know as a Christian. And I also have enough stuff happens that sometimes that tends to get taken away. But that's then where the Holy Spirit kicks in and constantly is a reminder that life has a lot of joy and pleasure and fun in it. And it's not all serious, hard, purposeful stuff. So that's one of the gifts that is often given by the Holy Spirit. The other gifts, they'll be cultivated as you go through life. Some of you will become good speakers, articulate in your use of language and in your writing. Others of you will recognize other people's needs and will just have a sort of responsiveness to helping other people. Some of you won't have the ability, personality-wise, to help other people directly because you just don't have the personality to do that. But what you do have, is the recognition that somebody's hurting and you don't have the skill to do it, but what you do have is the skill and the gift to communicate it to somebody else so that they can become the helpers. You have the insight to see it. They have the ability to do it. How? You don't have to be all things to all people. You just have to use the skills that you've got. And those skills are the equipment that the Holy Spirit gives you and has been giving to the church throughout the history of the church since Pentecost. The other thing that you'll be given is the gift of courage. Now, you oftentimes think of the gift of courage, I know all of us do, because we live in a 20th century and 21st century, we live in wars, and so we recognize courage through acts of bravery. The Bible talks about courage very differently. The Bible talks about courage as fortitude. That is an internal knowledge in your gut that you are going to love the world and you're going to love it into health. So if you know people that are really hurt, you try to help them to repair their lives. And if you're not good enough to do it by yourself, you got all these people here, all is, to ask. But that means, of course, getting to know their name and spending a little time here. So you can do that. And they can also then do the same thing to you. Ask you for help. It's called teamwork, by the way. I know we're modern Americans, we don't do teamwork, except in athletics. Not a high priority. In the church, it's the whole game. It's the whole game. Teamwork. Working together. So, these are all of the gifts of Pentecost that are present in you in the Spirit. The gift of wisdom, the gift of a recognition that you have certain gifts, the fortitude and courage to ask people for help if you're unable to do it or don't have the skills to do it, the fortitude and courage to actually talk to other people to learn what they can do and are capable of doing, and also sharing yourself so that they know what you can do. And that brings to the final gift, which is a gift of clarity. So that when you talk with clarity. You don't talk gobbledygook. Ask me how I am. Say it louder. Well, I don't know. I woke up this morning and, I was discombobulated, you know what I mean? I just wasn't having, I couldn't get it together as well as I could. But then later in the day, I drove over here and then I was sort of okay. And then somebody looked at me wrong and it just put me in a very bad mood. Because they gave me a hairy eyeball, you know what I'm saying? Looked at me out of the corner of their eye and just sort of ignored me, but stared at me. And that really put me in a very bad mood. So then I decided that I was going to give everybody the hairy eyeball and not be really nice to anybody, and I was just going to stay silent and be myself. And the heck with all of you.
Very nice.
See what I mean? You're talking with some clarity, but it's really not very clear as to who you are. Are you your own person who hears the call of Jesus to love your neighbor, even if you're in a yucky mood? Where you have the courage and fortitude to ignore and not worry about what other people think about you? That's the gift of the Spirit, where you never worry what anybody else thinks about you. You have your skills, your abilities, you have the ability to communicate, you communicate clarity, and you have the courage to follow through and ask others for help, and the openness so that they can talk to you if they need to. But the only way it's going to happen, I'm going to tell you that now. Jesus didn't start the church just for no reason. Sometimes we take the church for granted, all of us, and you know I'm telling the truth about this. Everybody wants the church here when they need it, on their terms. Otherwise, a lot of times, blow it